Good day. This is Harry Malan again, and I'm going to chat for the second time in a series of short videos on how we read our Bible. How accurate are we? Are we reading what is in front of us? And today I want to focus on the question of differences between our versions, between translations. And I'm not talking about differences between various languages, but differences in the translated versions that we have in one language. I'm using English at this stage, but I can assure you the same is applicable, for example, to my home language, which is Afrikaans. Now, I'm not trying to say that translators of the Bible had any ill intent or did not do very focused study. No. You see, the ancient languages were very, very different. The mindset was different. The context was so different. And not only that, even the physical written language was very different to ours. Punctuation marks, question marks, that kind of a thing is only a relatively recent development. So in dealing with those ancient documents, translators come before the situation where they have to interpret. But then, of course, it's unavoidable that our Western mind, the cultural context of the translator will have an influence. I may write in English, but I find myself thinking in my own language or the cultural context of that. And so it is with Bible translations. But let us move to an example from the Old Testament to begin with. Isaiah 59, verse 19. And we must bear in mind the context of this whole situation that we are reading. The Lord is speaking to unrighteous leaders through the prophet, and he's addressing and condemning pagan religions. Yeah. But then we find in the King James Version, verse 19, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. So the enemy is coming in, and then the Lord takes action against him. Let's look at the Hebrew Tanakh, the Hebrew, in our terms, Old Testament, the 1917 version, that last part. For distress will come in like a flood, which the breath of the Lord driveth. So it's not enemy, it's distress. And that word can also be translated as tribulation. But here distress comes in against those people that the Lord is admonishing. And the Lord's Spirit, the Lord's breath, is what is driving that. The New English translation says very much the same. In other words, for he comes like a rushing stream driven on by the wind sent from the Lord. Driven on by a wind sent from the Lord. So the different versions here give completely opposite explanations or situations that is described. And it is my responsibility as one who reads the Bible to make sure that I understand and I interpret correctly. And so I personally look at quite a number of different English versions. especially when it's important scriptures, and I want to make sure that I understand it correctly, I will look at various versions. And we're fortunate today, well, let's say it is available. I know not everybody would have it, but the electronic media has put instruments on our table to help us in this regard. There are many free Bible programs available on the internet, and one should make use of that, and of books, etc., that is available. Let's move to a New Testament example. Ephesians 4 verse 11 to 12. Now, this is about the so-called fivefold ministry, and it's a foundational concept within the Pentecostal and the charismatic environments. The King James Version again. And he gave some apostles, and some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers, for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. You see, the punctuation actually distinguishes three. These 5 gifts are given for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of ministry, and for the edifying of the body of Christ. If we look at the complete Jewish Bible, however, it gives us a different approach. He mentioned the 5 gifts in other words, and then says in a new sentence, their task is to equip God's people for the work of service that builds the body of the Messiah. So it's one thing, one description of what it is for, what the 5 ministry gifts are given for. To equip God's people for the work of service that builds the body of Messiah, not 3 separate ideas. The New English Translation does the same. To equip the saints for the work of ministry, that is to build up the body of Christ. So 3 different ideas or fruits or results become one. But let's move on to a second New Testament example. And this is a critical one. We see it, well, we have been seeing it actually for a few decades in end times context. And that is the mark of the beast that we read in Revelation 13, verse 16 to 17, the King James Version. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So 3. Looking at the complete Jewish Bible, it says that they were preventing anyone from buying or selling unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. So only 2. The mark is either the name or the number of the name, which is the same, for it identifies the name as well. The New English Translation says very much the same, unless he bore the mark of the beast. That is, his name or his number. Now, this of course is a symbolic description of loyalty to the beast. It goes back to the concept that is found, for example, in Deuteronomy 6 from verse 4, where the people are taught to teach the scriptures, to teach the Torah to their children and so on. And it says this, that bind it as a mark on your hand or your forehead. In other words, your life will be the mark. It will be seen in your loyalty towards God, or in this case, your loyalty towards the person who is described as the beast. Good. There are many more examples that we can look at, and maybe at a later time we'll have a chat about some more. I would also, in a future part, like to just show you the question of punctuation marks and the physical characteristics of some of the ancient languages, and so that you can see why it is not easy to do the translations, and why groups who translate the Bible might differ in interpretations that they put into the scriptures in their translation access or process. Good. Let me stop at that point, yeah, and we'll chat again. And in the meantime, be safe and God bless.